Tonight, the top U.S. General Mark Milley is giving his take on another chapter in the Trump classified documents investigation. This was reporting that CNN broke last week that the former president was recorded in July 2021, indicating that he had a classified Pentagon document pertaining to a potential attack on Iran and implying that it would counter what his top general, Mark Milley, was saying. Those comments were apparently in response to a New Yorker article saying that Milley had warned Trump against striking Iran, reportedly telling Trump, quote, "You're going to have a effing war." CNN's Oren Lieberman spoke exclusively with General Mark Milley, who was only willing to say this about that investigation.
The former president suggested in a book by Mark Meadows that it was your desire to attack Iran, and he was saying no. Is that what happened?
Well, it'd be entirely inappropriate, Oren. Thanks for the opportunity to comment on that. It'd be entirely inappropriate for me to comment on an ongoing federal investigation, and I'm not going to do that now. So,
not even to clarify what happened there?
No, I think it's inappropriate. There's an ongoing federal investigation, and I'm not going to comment one way or another on any of the issues concerning that.
Let's get more insight tonight from former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. And thank you, Ambassador, for being here. You heard from General Milley there weighing in. We do know from our reporting that he has spoken to investigators in this case. But when it comes to this document that Trump allegedly had on plans to potentially strike Iran, do you know which document Trump could have been holding in his hands during this recording?
Well, I don't think there's any way of knowing. And given Trump's propensity to overstate things, it's entirely possible he was holding in his hand something like the lunch menu from the Bedminster Grill that day, and that he was embellishing on what a document that Mark Milley might have prepared would say. So this goes to a pretty fundamental point. I don't have any doubt there are very sensitive documents involved here, but until you actually see them, I think it's important not to kind of overhype what may be at stake here, particularly with Trump, whose propensity to bluster, there's actually a better word for that I won't use on TV, but his propensity to bluster is unending.
Well, I think there's concern from prosecutors here, though, because they clearly want to know more about this. I mean, they brought the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in to talk about it. And of course, we don't actually know which document Trump was holding at that time, if he was simply referencing this document. But what our reporting did show is that the Justice Department wanted this document, and they sent a subpoena. They made clear to Trump's attorneys, I was told, that they wanted this document specifically that he was talking about on tape. But Trump's attorneys could not locate the document to produce it. So if he was holding that document and they were unable to find it, and there is a document related to Iran out there, how much does that concern you about how it could compromise the U.S. national security?
Well, if it were an actual document that the Pentagon produced as a war plan, that would be one thing. If it's simply Trump making it up as he goes along, that could explain why they can't find it, because it never existed. I mean, the other explanation is he destroyed it. And that would be a very serious matter, because it would show, I think, clearly a guilty intent that he had a highly classified document. The idea that you can take, though, the real official documents the Pentagon works on and kind of spread them around, even to the president, I would be very surprised at that. They are understandably kept very tightly held, infrequently taken away from the Pentagon, and usually removed from the Situation Room or the Oval Office with great care when the people who brought them over leave.
And I should note that you also have a level of concern here. The Justice Department charged a suspected Iranian operative last year for allegedly plotting to assassinate you. But on this front of when it comes to the relationship that Trump had with General Milley, what were your observations about Trump's views toward Chairman Milley?
Well, when I was at the White House, this was in the period where the successor to General Joe Dunford, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the beginning of the administration, was going on. And my own personal view was that Mark Milley should be chairman of the Joint Chiefs. It happened that Trump agreed with that and appointed him. And I think at the beginning he was enthusiastic that it was a good choice. And I certainly believed that at the time. I was gone, I think, when a lot of this interesting material happened. But it's obvious that relationship between Milley and Trump soured as Trump's relationship with so many other people soured.
As we see these investigations ramp up, we're going to wait to see what the special counsel does on this documents investigation. Trump is still the front runner for the Republican nomination for president. You've said you're considering a 2024 run. Have you made a decision on that yet?
No, I haven't. I want to see what happens with some of the other announcements. I would not do this frivolously or merely to criticize Trump's performance in office, although that would be, I think, an extensive job to do. It would be with the serious intent to win. I think it's critical for the Republican Party, absolutely critical, and for the country as well, that Trump not get our nomination. I think in a race against Biden, as unpopular as Biden is, Trump might well win. So I think this is a serious matter that Republicans are going to have to deal with. I wouldn't count on a deus ex machina like an indictment in the classified documents case to save us on this. Knowing Trump, he may well turn it into an asset.
How soon do you think you need to make a decision on on this, since we're seeing how big the field is getting?
Well, frankly, that's another consideration. If there's a small army of people wandering around seeking the nomination, I don't think there would be a case that I would be adding anything. But I think it's still early. I think this is a very strange cycle. And I think, honestly, in the next 90 days, it's a two-man race between Governor DeSantis and Trump. I think, knowing Trump as I do, that he will unload on DeSantis unceasingly. He's already started. And I think Governor DeSantis has got to come back with his case as to why Trump's not qualified to be president. And that's really a marker for everybody else who might get in. You're not going to get the Republican nomination by picking away at the other opponents. You're going to win the nomination by taking Trump on directly and beating him.
Well, they're not really taking Trump on directly. I mean, we saw 8 of the candidates, Trump is the 9th, in Iowa over the weekend, and none of them would really directly say his name when they were on stage. Do you think it's a mistake for candidates like Governor DeSantis to not directly criticize Trump in this race?
100%. This is not an issue about philosophy, because Trump has no philosophy. And it's not really an issue about his personality or his temperament. It's about his competence to be president, which he does not have. And I think unless you make that point effectively to voters and ignore the 800-pound gorilla, it's impossible to make that case. So I think the person who ultimately wins the Republican nomination is the person who beats Trump. And as you say, and I agree, I don't think anybody has stepped up to that role. Maybe Chris Christie will. God bless him if he does. But if he doesn't, somebody needs to. In my case, though, it would be not just to do that, but to win the nomination.
Well, we'll see what you decide ultimately. I know you were listening to the top of the show as we were talking about this new CNN reporting on investigators looking into a pool that was drained at Mar-a-Lago and then flooded a room that has the computer servers that store the surveillance footage that we know prosecutors have subpoenaed. Of course, still a lot of questions about that, but what was your reaction to hearing that?
Well, I think the prosecutors are right to be suspicious of Trump and his capacity to obstruct justice. This particular episode, frankly, struck me as a little Rube Goldberg-like, but not beyond the realm of the possible. I don't remember the geography or the architecture enough to understand how draining the pool would have flooded this room. But it's, look, you've got to pursue every lead in a case this serious. There's no doubt about it. It may turn out not to represent anything, or it may. We don't know. There's a lot we don't know, and that may be part of it.
Yeah, a lot of questions remain. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for your time tonight.